Welcome to the Sharpe Way. Yes, we are here again Monday evenings, 8 to 10. I'm here live just for you because I care and love you so much. And yes, you have to watch all 2 hours. It is the law. You have to do it. And speaking about law, we have the only person to be on the Sharpe Way 2 times, our resident legal expert, the man, the myth, former prosecutor, current renowned defense attorney, the man himself, Vinoo Varghese is here.
What's up, legend? How you doing tonight?
I am so happy that you are here because tonight we're talking about legal issues. We're talking about bail reform, Weinstein, impeachment. We got stuff going on here. And what I hear constantly, by the way, if you want to join us on the program, if you want to talk what you think about these issues, please feel free to give us a buzz. You can call in at 573-427-5463. Give us a buzz. Let us know what you think. But I want to start this conversation on what I've been hearing complaints about in New York State for a long time now. Maybe 2 months online. I hear it. People text me. People reach out to me, tweet me. They are angry about bail reform in New York State. And what I mentioned, and you can give me your take on this, please, is that I get that the law is not perfect. I love the idea of bail reform in general. I think it's an amazing idea, and we should have it. What I believe happened was that Democrats were unaccustomed to just walking right through, and they put everything they wanted in this bill, and no one fought it. And they went, okay, check, because now Cuomo, if you don't know, New York State, Cuomo now runs our entire government. He runs all 3 branches now. So it was a rubber stamp, and boom, all of a sudden, everything went through. And now you find people are finding some holes, and even some Democratic lawmakers are thinking, wait a minute, maybe we have to rethink this a bit, because I think what should have happened in the halls of the assembly is now happening on the streets, or will now have to happen again in either some judge making some ruling or something like that. Where do you stand on this?
I think it's a lot of fear mongering.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree with you more, Larry. I think what's happening is that these legislators are being concerned because the New York Post is running a story every day with some gangster-looking black man on the cover saying this is the poster child for bail reform and why it's bad. You have the chief of detectives, Shea, who was on last week, talking about an increase in car thefts, like maybe 50% since last year at this same period, blaming it on bail reform without any data to support this.
So that's bail reform.
That's bail reform. It must be that A plus B equals X, right?
I love it.
That's his math, his fuzzy math. No data to support this stuff. So this is what drives me crazy, because this is a long time coming, right? And I think what happens is when you talk about Democrats being in charge and stuff, I mean, you know this stuff way better than I do. I don't follow it as closely as you do, Larry. But what I don't understand is that bail reform should easily be a bipartisan, or if the Libertarian Party were there, a tripartisan issue.
Absolutely, yes.
Right? It should be.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is something that affects everybody, but I get what's going on, and I get why these Republicans are angry, because you have the prison industrial complex.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So you have these guys, most of which are black men, being shipped upstate to fuel the economy up there. I'm not an economist, and you can speak to this more than I can. But I get it, because now you have those people who are now, as they should, being let free. Look at this headline from yesterday, the New York Post. Brooklyn rape suspect was free under New York's new bail reform law. Right? Scary. Okay.
So I guess he's a rapist that we've just let out.
Right. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
You're counting.
5. Okay, paragraph 6. Tyler was arraigned late Sunday night on separate charges.
So he wasn't arraigned on rape.
Right. And held in lieu of $75,000 bail. I guess that means not in lieu of, but I guess that means he was held on $75,000 bail. Okay. So he's been charged with something that caused bail to be set. Okay. Some kind of violent felony.
So bail was set.
Right.
So he made bail.
No. he wasn't arraigned on the attempted rape charge filed by cops because investigators wanted to re-interview the victim. I didn't know she was a victim. Because,
okay. Well, she's accused. That makes her a victim, right. I guess.
But we're unable to find her. A police source said investigators are continuing to probe the woman's claim. He's just the latest bail reform case that has drawn the ire of police officials. Wait a minute. Whoa.
So if I get what you're saying is this is a situation where the cops aren't even sure.
Right.
So the cops aren't even sure this guy did it. And we think he should be in jail for the next 3 months until the cops figure out who and what happened.
Right. And the Legal Aid Society, to their credit, posted this statement. They countered that bail reform has already worked to free thousands of New Yorkers, many of whom who could not afford to buy their freedom from pretrial detention back to their families. Also, this accused rapist has no criminal record. He does have 2 open cases, but has not been convicted of the other. And in the very last paragraph of the thing, and to the New York Post, they do have the rule of completeness.
Okay.
Right? They do include everything.
They
if
do.
you look at the Post, they actually write,
but just at the end.
You have to get there.
You've got to go 6 paragraphs
20
down.
paragraphs.
Okay,
And they
I
get
got
there.
you.
But
okay.
they say, we urge the public not to draw any conclusions based on a narrative being peddled by law enforcement in an attempt to undermine the new pretrial reforms. I agree with them.
But don't we have bail reform laws similar to New York State in other states, right? Don't other states have similar, bail reform issues they've dealt with? And is there a rash of murders or whatever? Is there data that supports this fear? I mean, we've seen it happen in other states, right?
This is hysteria created by people who want to keep the prison industrial complex going. And that's what's frightening here.
What most people don't know is if there are prisoners in your state, those count for population. They do. Yes.
I didn't even know that.
So you actually want prisoners in your district so you can get the power of the population, but they don't vote.
Right.
So good for you if you're in assembly or in a senate, whatever. You get that as population. So you do get that for benefits and such. So they are citizens and their residence is in your county or your district.
Well, it also fuels a certain thing, which is that, there's such crime, then they could apply for certain federal funding. There's an increased emphasis on something, on things.
But isn't this also something that just some lawmakers are going to use to rile their base?
100%.
Right?
100%.
But let's be fair, though. There are problems with the bill. It's not a perfect bill.
Correct.
Let me give you the 2 things that I hear constantly. The first thing I hear is, Larry, why wouldn't you want the judges to have some discretion? Right? I hear this. Larry, don't you want judges to have discretion? Judges should have discretion. Judges should have discretion. You don't agree with that. I know you're not talking about this. You don't agree with this. Why not?
I don't, because there's very few judges I trust to exercise their discretion properly. What often happens is a lot of these guys, you got to understand how judges are appointed or elected. Most of these people that are in positions in judgeships are there not because of merit, but because they've got political connections. Mm-hmm. They've contributed enough to their local, in New York City, it's a Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. If they've risen up and become friends with a Democratic club, Democratic Party club, they're eventually, if they wait their time, are going to get a certain position in which they will run unopposed with the party support, right?
Right.
And it is a monopoly. I mean, Republicans stand no chance in New York City.
Right.
So you have situations where I've been part of judicial screening committees for the last 15 years. Both when I lived in Brooklyn, when I lived in Manhattan, I've been part of both the judicial screening committees. And as I see these candidates, a lot of them are unqualified. And then I find out like a year later, oh, wait a minute, such and such person is now a judge. Right? I'm like, what? So you deem this person unqualified.
So you think if you gave judges, this is scary what you're saying. This is scary.
Yeah.
What you're saying is you believe that if you gave judges discretion, that they would just lock everybody up.
Some judges.
Okay.
Some judges would go the other way, right?
Oh, some just let everybody out.
Correct. So
Gotcha.
it really depends on the person's thing. So I think that having rules in place are proper. I think the problem with this law is that if somebody gets rearrested after being released within a certain period of time or while they have an open case, judges should be allowed to set bail.
Right. Okay.
I think that's just reasonable. And I think that the situations that are being emphasized, as I said, the New York Post, they know what drives the sales of their papers.
Right.
Put some angry-looking young black man on their cover, on their thing, and say, this is what's wrong. I mean, look at this article.
Right.
I sit there and I know better than to trust a New York Post headline.
So, all right, but what about the idea that some judges are going to go one way or the other on purpose? Meaning, now that I have the new bail reform bill,
I'm going to add, one guy already did this. This judge in Nassau County last week said, screw this bail reform. I'm going to put this guy in jail. And he did.
And what happened?
The lawyers took it to the higher judge within the same courthouse, and he had to free him. And then when contacted by the newspapers, was like, oh, I can't comment on it. No, you did, Judge. You just did. You got your New York Post headline as a champion for law enforcement, right? And the cops. And the cops in Nassau County were like, oh, this guy's great. This guy's a hero. This judge is tough. No, he wasn't. He was pandering to the crowds.
What about the opposite, where some judge who actually doesn't like bail reform purposely lets people out on, just to say, you know what, let them all out, forget it. That's how you're going to be, Cuomo. Let them all out. Let them all out.
I don't see that happening.
You don't see that happening?
I don't see that happening. In fact, there have been judges. We had a case in our own office where the prosecutor came to the arraignment and lamented and complained on the record that she couldn't set bail because it was a burglary charge. Well, it's a nonviolent burglary charge. It was a drama over boyfriend-girlfriend.
Well, I remember this. There was a situation where there was a guy who was a bank robber. I remember this was a story. It was a bank robber, and he was robbing banks. He got arrested. They let him out, and he literally went out and robbed the bank again. Like, they let him out, and then he walks down the street.
Let's clarify bank robbery.
Tell me.
Okay, let's clarify bank robbery.
Okay.
The dude is writing handwritten notes that says, give me money to the person, right? He walked away with $1,000. That was another New York Post headline.
Yep,
right?
I remember that one. Yes.
And so he got arrested, and eventually the federal government charged with federal bank robbery or whatever, right? Because normally those amounts don't usually attract the attention of the federal government.
Because it's too low.
But remember here, U.S. attorneys are also, they're politicians in their own way. While they're appointed, most of them have higher aspirations as well.
Got it.
They want to be the one that's tough and put this guy away, right? So I think a lot of this, both at the federal level, at the state level, a lot of it's just pandering and fear-mongering.
So I'm glad you brought us up, and anyone who's interested and wants to call about bail reform, please feel free. I know people want to talk about other things also, but I want to bring up the bail reform. If you want to discuss it, people got mad at me. They wanted me to talk about it. So I brought on an expert just for you guys to talk about this issue. 573-427-5463. I'm going to grab a call. It's a little bit off topic, but I'll grab it. I'm going to talk to somebody here coming out of North Carolina. I like that. Tony from North Carolina. Tony, how are you, sir? Tony, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. What do you want to talk about, my friend?
Iowa caucus.
Okay, go ahead.
Why aren't you talking about the Iowa caucus more tonight? It's the Iowa caucus.
Because does it matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'd love to hear your your opinion on that.
Does it matter? Is why. That's my point, right? It looks like early on that the top three people that we knew are ahead, right? Biden and Bernie and Warren are ahead. We kind of thought they were going to be ahead. Are we shocked by this? Does it change how you think about them? Tony, you always going to vote Bernie if he wins? Is that going to happen?
Well, I heard one rumor today that Bernie was actually starting to court our party, the Libertarian Party.
I would love for Bernie to come aboard. Oh, my God. That would be amazing. I don't know why he would, but if Bernie decided he wants to come aboard and he wants to try to get a nomination, I am in. Come on, Bernie. And the reason why I say it is the amount of press our party would get for Bernie trying to come aboard would be amazing. He would never get the nomination. I mean, if he did, shame on us, right? If he actually got it.
Sounds anti-libertarian.
Exactly. It's very, yes. If he did actually get it, shame on us. But we should be bold enough and free enough and confident enough in our party and our principles to happily accept him trying to get our nomination. I would love that. If Bernie, if you're listening, Come on, brother. I want you.
He's
Let's
dealing
do
with
it.
impeachment, Larry.
Yes, he's dealing with impeachment. That's right. Yeah. So
I hear he is. I hear he's an avid Sharpe listener.
There we go.
He may be a little busy tonight.
He's busy tonight, but that's okay. Maybe some of his people are listening. Bernie people, if you're listening, I am happy. Please try to get a nomination. It would be. I hope he makes it to convention. Can you imagine the amount of press that would show up at our convention, Tony, if Bernie was at our convention?
If we had Pete Buttigieg at our convention,
any of them.
I
take any. I've said more than once. Anybody wants a nod, come on in. I'll take anybody who wants to come aboard. Come on in. I'm happy to have you. And look, I'm confident enough in our party and our principles. And maybe I'm silly and maybe I'm wrong. I don't care. But I am confident enough that we will pick the right person, or at least someone who isn't that bad. Whatever the case may be. I don't think we'll pick someone who's an open socialist. I don't think we'll pick that person. And if we do, shame on us. That's all I have to say. But I would love for these people to try. All of them. Klobuchar can come. Biden can come. Let them all come. Let them all. Joe Walsh can come. They can all come. Let's make it CNN.
Joe Walsh.
Yeah, Joe Walsh is running as a Republican. Yeah. So yeah,
that'd be. Bill Weld can come.
Bill Weld can come back. Let them all come. All of them. As long as they bring press, they can all come. Bring the press. I'm in. Let's do it.
Bring the press. So you're all about the press.
If they don't bring the press, they're not welcome. That's it. This is BYOP. Bring your own press. That's what this is. Libertarian Party is BYOP. Bring your own press.
Bring your own press corps.
Absolutely.
I like it.
That's your entry ticket as far as I'm concerned. You got a press corps with you? You're in. That's what I want.
Now, my other question, since we're talking about libertarian, would you like to see us do something like a caucus like this in the future? Clearly, nobody would pay attention.
You mean, do you think New York State should be caucusing instead of primarying? Is that what you're saying?
Actually, yes. Actually, that's exactly what I'm saying. How would things be different?
Yeah, look, I like the idea of caucusing because caucusing does allow for more grassroots. It also allows for coalitions, which I like. So I like the idea of caucusing. Basically, our convention in Austin this year, our national convention, is basically a caucus. I mean, it isn't exactly, but it basically is because we vote, but we go several rounds and people start wheeling and dealing. It's what happens. It's how I almost got the VP nod in 2016, right? By wheeling and dealing with other groups of people who said, I'd rather have this guy than that guy. So we're a semi-caucus. Not 100%, but kind of like one. So I'm not against the caucus, but I think we have to change New York State law, I believe, if we wanted to caucus instead of primary in New York State. Let's just do primary first.
I could really cause you trouble and say, you heard it here first, caucus, and Larry will be your vice presidential candidate this year. But I wouldn't do that to you, Larry.
You just did, Tony. You just did.
You didn't need me to do that. Everybody else was. Without even looking at the chat, I'm betting it's full of Larry for president 2020.
One can
hope. I'm not even looking.
One can hope. I appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the call.
Thank you, my friend. Have a good one.
Bye.
So, yeah, I'm not really talking much about the caucus because I don't know if it really matters. I know. Vin, do you have an opinion on the caucus either way?
I don't think it's going to, make a difference in the end. Hopefully, for the Democrats' sake, hopefully it'll be Biden who comes out on top ultimately.
For the Democrats, and you and I have talked about this. My wife was a Democrat for probably 25 years. She recently said she's not one anymore. She said that they don't represent her anymore. She said that recently. But she hasn't picked a party. She's done what many people in America has done, which is become kind of unaffiliated. Now she's like whatever, and she just picks people that she wants to vote for. She doesn't really consider herself any party anymore. She was good to me, and she registered Libertarian, so that was nice. But she's not really Libertarian. But she did register one because she loves me.
So Larry,
nice.
she got rid of the one place where her vote matters, which is in the New York primary.
Well, no,
as a Democrat,
I would say the reverse is true, because she never wanted to vote in the primary. So that never motivated her. She only wanted to vote.
Elections, you vote as a Democrat doesn't count,
which is why she doesn't care anymore. Right. As a Democrat in New York, as a Republican in New York State, it doesn't matter anymore, right? So I'm hoping people get that and vote Libertarian this year because any other vote is useless. The only vote that actually counts this year is a libertarian vote because you can ensure that we actually get ballot access for the coming years. So you can actually have impact if you vote libertarian this year. If you vote anything else, it doesn't matter because whoever the Democrats get is going to win New York State. So
no, but the vote does matter for the Democratic primary.
Primary, yeah, but
Right.
probably won't in New York though because it'll be selected by then. Our primary's too late. So the odds are it won't matter in New York either, right? The odds are by the time it gets past Super Tuesday, and we're not in Super Tuesday.
Right.
By the time it gets past Super Tuesday, we're going to know who the winner is. So it actually probably won't matter in New York State anyway. So either way, your vote probably won't matter in New York State because whoever's ahead, it's useless.
Damn, you just crushed me, Larry.
Which is why you should all register libertarian. That's what I've been saying for the past 3 years.
I voted for you, Larry.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Yes. But I guess my point is my wife, who was Democrat, she likes angry Biden. Like she likes Biden when he's mad.
I like that too.
You do too.
I
See,
do.
yeah. I think a lot of Democrats really like the angry Biden. They like when he's like, "I'm gonna beat Trump's ass." I think they like that Biden.
Love it.
Yeah, and if I was running Biden's campaign, I would literally be saying, "You answer every question with how you're gonna physically beat up Trump." That's what do you think about healthcare? Trump's gonna need it when I whip his ass. That's how you should answer every question, right? Just keep saying that. Democrats will vote for you, and you got a shot at winning this damn thing.
Yeah.
Angry Biden's the answer. I don't know if he can keep it together though, but we'll see. What happens if Bernie wins? Bernie might win Iowa, and then what happens?
It's not over.
Not over.
It's not
Okay.
over. I mean,
Gotcha.
he
All right.
can win Iowa, but he doesn't mean it's over.
All right. All right, let me go on the call if I can. I'm going to go over to Pennsylvania. Went from North Carolina over to Pennsylvania, grabbing Avery. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Larry. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. You want to talk about bail reform?
I do.
Talk to me.
So this is pretty much a straightforward question. Do you think the issue is really about bail reform or a whole restructuring of the criminal justice system?
So that is a wonderful question. Wow, that's a wonderful question. Now, as a general rule, I am a big fan of incrementalism, right? I like being able to move forward. People test it, feel comfortable, test it, feel comfortable, test it, feel comfortable. As a general rule, I am a fan of incrementalism because I think people who are afraid make bad decisions. So I like that we go bail reform. The world doesn't end. Now we can try
Not
something
according
else.
to the New York Post, though.
Well, yes, now, but hopefully within 6 months to a year from now, we realize the world hasn't ended. And hopefully we have the back and forth required to make it a better law. I'm hoping we actually do that. And then the world doesn't end. So, Avery, I do want a complete overhaul. I do want that. I do want an end to the war on drugs. I do want a complete an end to the prison industrial complex. But I also don't want to make, what's the saying? Making the perfect the enemy of the good, right? I don't want to take nothing when I can get something. So I think the goal, we have to make sure that the goal isn't only this, that we understand this is the first step. I know. Look, you're a defense attorney. Tell me, where's your head on this?
I can go back to a time when I was back in my dark period of my life when I was a prosecutor. Right,
You were on the opposite side of this.
I was. That's a joke, by the way, to all my prosecutor friends, which I made the same joke last time I was here. It used to bother me because we'd be setting bail at literally sometimes $250, $500 for people who were charged with jumping a turnstile and smoking a blunt in public.
Right.
They couldn't make it.
They couldn't make $250.
No. And often the legal aid attorney would pass over to me and say, dude, they're not going to make it. I know they got a couple things. And I had enough of a good relationship with most of the legal aid lawyers to know, what was up. And the only time we'd set bail and not make a deal on these people was when they had prior criminal histories.
Oh, I see.
Things. So on a first arrest, that was never an issue.
So
right?
as a general rule, you didn't want to do bail. I mean, you didn't want to set bail. What if it was a first time offense?
Unless it was a bad guy.
Got it.
Right. So, if it was,
but
it wasn't. It wasn't.
That were telling you should.
Correct. We had
guidelines.
We had guidelines. So we had bail guidelines, which were set bail. If they had an arrest, and you had to ask for bail, right? Minimum $500 and stuff. So, this is the kind of game that was going on, and I got tired of it. And so when I was in arraignments, I would be like, nah. And I'd look at it and go, okay, this is what he's charged with. This is not a crime that requires bail to be set. And so I was doing, back then, my own version of this.
So you were a rebel already.
I was. That's why I wasn't a company guy. And,
Got it. Okay.
I did my own thing, and I did what I always believed was right and fair in the situation. Right? Did I always get it right? No,
of course.
Right, but that's the issue. So when you talk about bail reform, it's part of a larger issue. Larry,
I think that's what Avery's talking about. Exactly.
Right, which is not just bail reform, but discovery reform. Right? I mean,
explain discovery to the people in the audience.
Discovery is the government's evidence, and it's simplest way to put it. The evidence that the government has that they're looking to use against you at trial, but it's actually more than that. It can be evidence that they haven't turned over to you, which could potentially clear you, right? Which is known in the legal lingo as Brady material, right?
Okay.
So prosecutors have an obligation to turn over Brady material. The question is when. And when do you do it? And
they do it the day before we got a problem.
Right. Well, that's what they do. And here's the problem with the whole Brady rules and what they call exculpatory evidence, meaning evidence that may clear you, is that you leave it up to prosecutors to decide.
Got it.
Right? We imagine
that discretion thing you don't like so much.
No, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan.
Tell.
Because
fan.
Here's the problem I have. And I had worked for 3 years before I went to law school, so imagine some kid never worked a job in their life, goes to high school, goes straight to college, then goes straight to law school. And their first job, that person's first job in life, is as an assistant district attorney.
Wow.
In some county in New York or anywhere in this country, right?
Right.
And they are deciding liberty.
Right.
You are now entrusting a liberty of an individual to some 24, 25-year-old who's never worked a day in his or her life, whose mom or daddy, took care of them, paid for everything, and has no clue about the real world. That's the problem. And then now you're leaving it up to that person who has no life experience to determine, hey, does this potentially clear the defendant? Nah, because I wouldn't look at it that way, and therefore I'm not going to turn this over. That's the problem. So what open file discovery does is then take that outside the hands of the prosecutor.
Just everything goes to you.
Everything goes to the defense attorney. You as the prosecutor gets it from the police or from their own investigation, you turn it over. Now, opponents of this will say, "Oh, you got to protect. You have to have witness safety and all this stuff." Most crimes are not going to involve threats of violence. Right? In those cases, overwhelming majority aren't.
Yes.
So in those cases, yes, the prosecutor can move for what's called a protective order and say, we'll provide certain things. We want to prevent the names of certain witnesses, an eyewitness to a homicide. That's not the overwhelming majority of cases.
So you're saying they already have a mechanism to deal with that if it's the case?
100%.
Got
right?
it. Okay.
And New York, this liberal bastion,
supposed liberal,
yes, is one of the worst states when it came to this in the country.
Got it.
North Carolina and Texas are ahead of New York in this world, and Florida too.
There we go. Florida's ahead of us. Texas is ahead of us. What's going on?
Right? All these places that people criticize and say bad things. No, New York was behind, and now they've put forth discovery reform, and prosecutors are crying and crying and crying. And a judge just this week in Albany found there was created a prosecutorial watchdog thing that found it to be unconstitutional. Well, because the DA wing is very powerful in New York.
Sure, I can imagine.
The DA lobby.
Sure.
So once you take the power away from the DA lobby, there's a group that watches over judges. Why can't there be a group that watches over prosecutors?
Sure.
So
Avery, what were you thinking? I mean, where was your head here?
Well, I'm kind of stuck on the issue about the fairness of this whole bail reform, especially in New York. So it's supposed to create fairness for people based pretty much on wealth, so that people who are not as wealthy as some, pretty much poor, don't get as much of a fairness as somebody who can just buy their way out. What I'm trying to understand is how would this bail reform work if maybe hypothetically the prosecutor can say, well, you know what, I'm just going to put a harder sentence on this person because I know that they're not going to have to worry about bail. They're going to get pretty much a get out of jail free card. What's your kind of thought on that?
What do you mean by a harder sentence? You mean a higher bail? Is that what you mean?
A higher bail or no bail at all. Pretty much why do you think prosecutors will become harsher when it comes to people because they know people will not have to pay these types of bails?
So you're saying you're worried about a backlash from prosecutors?
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Look, you know. What do you think? Will there be a backlash, or is there one already from prosecutors trying to somehow punish those who they feel have wronged them, or something like that, or punishing some of the kids with higher numbers or something like that? Is there a backlash?
I haven't heard that. That's an interesting thought that people are going to punish people who've made bail by offering jail. I just don't see that happening, because if they're out, most pleas are done. Most people plead guilty when they're incarcerated, right? If they're out, they're less likely to plead guilty. So ultimately, I don't see that happening, because prosecutors can't try all these cases. So people take pleas, and often too many innocent people take pleas because they don't want to fight anymore.
Right.
Right? Guy's been in jail for 6 months. The prosecutor offers time served. At that point, you're like, what should I do?
Right.
I could spend another 2 years. You've probably heard the story of Khalif Browder.
Of course.
Right? I met Khalif the week before he committed suicide.
Is that right?
Right, because he was being represented by my friend and colleague Paul Prestia, who represented him on his civil rights thing. Paul and I were in the same office for a number of years. I met him the week before I had already known his story. The guy spent 3 years in jail, and ultimately the DA
was never convicted.
Correct, and the DA had to dismiss the case. He just couldn't make bail.
So he spent 3 years in jail for nothing.
Correct. And abused by everyone.
He was abused. In this case, he was abused by both guards and inmates, correct?
That's the story, yeah.
He was abused by both guards and inmates, and then got out and then committed suicide.
Correct.
Yes.
Well, Larry, do you mind if I step in for a second?
Go ahead, please. Yes, go.
Yeah. Well, that's my issue here. Do you think that it's really about bail reform? It's more about restructuring the system so that people who are in jail for that amount of time are not in so long that they're abused by other inmates and things like that. Is that really the issue, or is it really bail reform?
I think it's bail reform, but something else happened to spur it, and that is the cost. Right? What happened in New York State, what actually spurred bail reform wasn't all of a sudden His Majesty King Cuomo said, I feel bad. He doesn't feel bad. He doesn't give a shit at all. He never does. He never has. Still doesn't. He's a bad person. I'll say it. He's a bad guy. He does not care at all. What he's looking at is, my God, I have a $6 billion deficit. I've got $400 billion in debt. These prisoners are expensive. That's what he was thinking. Yeah. I can't afford to buy new jails. And he can't stand the corrections officers. He punishes them like there's no tomorrow. I don't know if you know this. Correction officers, their life expectancy is 58 years old. That's how bad they're treated. Yeah. So he treats them as bad as the prisoners. So he's hammering everybody in there. So he thought, you know what? Why don't I just do this, and that'll make me look like I'm this guy who cares about people. And what'll happen is the jail population will be cut tremendously. And now all of a sudden I have a lower budget. But something else happens. I get to open up Rikers Island. So for those of you who don't know, Rikers Island is our jail here in New York City. It's massive. And boy, oh boy, do some real estate developers want Rikers Island. They sure do. Well, they can't get it. It's a prison. I'm sorry, it's a jail. Well, if you get rid of half your jail population and you build some smaller jails, who builds those smaller jails? Oh, those same developers. And who else? And then who gets Rikers Island? Oh, those same developers. Some of you may not realize, but the biggest lobby in New York used to be finance. Now it's real estate. Finance has gone away, and this is something that most people don't get, which is what I was talking about during my campaign. What New York State has done by throwing out and being so anti-small business, so anti-gig economy, so anti-anything new, cryptocurrency, cannabis, insert thing here, what's happened is a lot of new starts don't want to be here like they used to be here. And in the past, startups would follow finance. Tech would follow finance. Finance was in New York State, New York City. Tech would come here. The reverse has now happened. Now, because tech generates so much money, finance follows tech. So finance is leaving New York City and going to the Valley because Silicon Valley is where the tech is. So we're losing our finance from New York State, and now real estate is our biggest lobby. So when real estate wants to build some new jails and get a piece of Rikers Island, they tend to get it. So as usual, it's a money grab.
Can I add, Larry, that I think there are enough people who actually thought and cared.
Yep.
That to try to get and reduce the prison populations. I think that there are enough good people who fought for this, right?
Yes, agreed.
And I think that, in this situation, you look at this, and this is the right thing to do. I mean,
No
it used
question.
to break my heart.
Yep.
When I was a prosecutor, this is 15 plus years ago, you see people on these things because you had to ask for bail and they weren't going to make it, right? As I said, I did my own sort of bail reform at the time, right? This is the right move, notwithstanding the New York Post and all this fear-mongering that's going on. I think there should be a judge should be able to set bail if a guy gets rearrested in the following week and all this stuff. And that's generally not happening. The New York Post cherry picks or picks a case, and the police unions are doing the same thing because here's the thing. If there are less people incarcerated, there's less work for these guys to do.
Absolutely.
Right? So this is all part of the same system. I was over the weekend, I was with a couple guys I went to high school with who were one was a retired police officer, two are still active, or two were retired, one was still active. And they were like, I was telling them about the chief of detective Shea's comment drawing the parallel between bail reform and a spike in auto crimes.
Right.
They're like, hey, you got to blame somebody for this.
I like that. They knew it off the bat.
They knew it. They knew it right off the bat.
I love that.
I said, this is incredible. So,
well, no, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, when was Browder killed? When did he kill himself? Sorry, what year? 16, 15?
it was a few years ago, yeah.
Right? So my point, I agree with you. But my point is people have been fighting for this for at least a decade, if not more, that I can remember a decade, probably longer, for bail reform. My point wasn't that this was a bad idea. I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm behind it 100%. Right. I think we do have to make some changes. I'm agreeing with that 100%. Right. We need to make some shifts. It's not perfect, but I love the concept. But my point was His Majesty finally agreed with it. He's been our governor for 10 years. Right. So he could have made this happen any time in the past 10 years. He chose now because it's a money grab, right? His financial landscape, the state
also,
has changed.
I mean, not that I care to defend Governor Cuomo at all, but he didn't have his Democratic majority, right? I mean, that's...
So you're telling me he couldn't have got bail reform passed?
I think they had enough opposition from the Republicans and upstate Republicans on this.
He vetoes all kinds of things. They could have put it forward anyway.
Yeah,
I don't remember a bail reform bill at all. Yeah. Maybe there was one. I don't remember one.
Well, discovery reform, that's been on the plate, and prosecutors have fought that.
Right.
And they've gotten the ear of people, certain Republicans when they were in power to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
Right. But discovery reform, open file discovery, has been practiced in New York City by most of the district attorneys with the exception of Manhattan. Right. And they're the ones crying the most about it right now.
Of course.
And you know what's behind the times in all of this? The states are moving forward in this. The federal government.
Of course.
Right. The federal government's way behind all this stuff. Right.
Yes.
You had Trump pass the First Step Act. Right, to his credit.
No, I give Trump credit for that. 100%.
Where there's some, a tiny bit of movement on prison reform.
And if Kim Kardashian can help, I'm with Kim too.
I mean,
absolutely.
This is amazing that these U.S. Congressmen, senators, and people are they're just out there.
Absolutely.
Right? They just, instead of trying to cut this down, there's just more stuff being added to the federal criminal code year after year, the over-criminalization of America.
Excellent. So, Avery, did I answer your question?
You did. And yeah, before I let you go, I will say that this is an important issue that we need to discuss, but it's such a divisive issue too. I'm looking at the news articles right now, and I see one headline that says, drunk driver bragged about how he'd get out of jail the day after killing somebody. It's ridiculous. Like, this is not, you obviously know how the news or certain people are going to go on this issue, but it's an honest issue that we need to discuss.
And I think if you come
back here, that's an oversimplification. I mean, that article, you need to explore that, because if you've been charged with vehicular homicide, bail's going to get set.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not the overwhelming majority of cases that people are complaining about are low-level, nonviolent crimes, right? Vehicular
Right.
homicide, there's going to be bail set. It's not excluded from the bail reform. I mean, it's not part of this.
Right,
So I think
right.
people are just mixing things in, and the Post is looking at headlines. And just as I read you the New York Post article with the truth about
The
stuff,
details was 6 paragraphs
that's
down.
important.
Right, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I agree with you.
They're trying to
Avery, and
nitpick the issue.
I think 6 months from now, a year from now, this is going to be a non-issue. I think we'll have shaken things up, made things right. I think a year from now, we won't be talking about this at all. I think it's just a spike in newspapers, a spike for those running for office, a reason for someone to say, vote for me and don't vote for the other guy. I think after the election this year, we won't be talking about this ever again. It'll be over.
There's one other aspect
Wait,
of this.
Larry, are you trying to say that this is all political?
What? No, I would never say, oh,
What?
oh, I'm insulted, Avery, that you would even say such a thing about me. Oh. So, yes.
Can I just add one aspect of this?
Go ahead,
And
please.
this is the thing that Larry, that people and my police officer friends were actually saying this. There has to be a way to deal with the mentally ill.
Oh, yes.
Right? So what this has done is criminalize people who have mental health issues and keep them in jail. Instead of putting people in jail with bail, put people in to be evaluated and
Sure.
I'm okay when it's warranted to have somebody held temporarily to be evaluated,
Sure.
right? But that requires resources. You got to divert that prison money
Right.
to mental health. Is King Andrew talking about that?
Nope.
I don't hear that.
Nope.
Right?
Not at all.
And
Nope.
His honor here in New York City, I even don't hear him. Right? He just has all these people out on the street. And where is the focus on getting the services that these guys need?
I love it. Avery, thank you so much for calling, my friend.
Thank you, Larry. You guys have a good one.
All righty, have a good one.
you.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we're on the same page, that this is a good idea. I seriously think, though, come November, whatever, the end of whatever the day is after the election day, I think it's going to be a non-issue anymore. We will have fixed it. Everyone who wanted to run on it will have run on it already. Everyone who got their votes will have gotten their votes or their donations, and I think it will be a non-issue. So, look, we're on criminal tonight, so let me go over to Pennsylvania. No New Yorkers today. It's okay. I'm all happy with that, but no New Yorkers today. I still love you all. We're going to deal with Eric in Pennsylvania. Eric, how are you? Eric, you there?
Yes.
What's going on, my friend?
How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing good.
I wanted to call in. I was watching the podcast. and-
Okay. And you want to talk about what?
Being-
Nonviolent crimes?
Yes.
Tell me.
Well, I mean, we need to knock them down. I mean,
Why?
you
Tell
know,
me.
Why? I mean, putting people in jail for doing pretty much nothing.
Well, not all nonviolent crimes are nothing, right? I mean, what if you stole someone's
no.
car and now I can't get to work and I lose my job? What if you broke into someone's house and took some of their very important memorabilia and you sold it? Now I can't get it back. I think there are
That's
crimes
true.
that are nonviolent that can be very serious. What if you swindled someone out of their IRA or anything like that, right?
Well, that's a little bit more than a non-violent crime because that's as intent.
Oh, so you're saying intentional crimes? That's different.
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
non-violent and intentional crimes are definitely different.
Well, I think intent
But
does
you get
matter,
caught-
right?
Intent does matter.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna commit a crime and it only had the merit of I was doing something that was good for me, say like marijuana, something like that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, but there's a difference, though, right? In my world, and this is not true, obviously, but in my world, any crime of possession is not a crime, right? I don't see that as a crime. Obviously, the law disagrees with me, but I don't see
Right
any
now, yeah.
possession as a crime. That I have this thing, so what? That doesn't mean I'm a criminal. Did I use this thing to hurt someone, to take their stuff, to delay them, affect them? Yeah, that's a criminal act. I completely agree. So someone who has marijuana or ingests cannabis, obviously that's not the law. But in my view, that's not a crime. Someone who steals to get cannabis, that's a crime. But if you steal to
Yes,
get
it is.
anything, it's a crime. I don't care if you stole because you want to get booze or you want to get some new shoes. That's not really my
No,
concern.
stealing is stealing. I mean,
Stealing is stealing.
you take somebody else's property, that is stealing.
So-
If you have something as a non-violent crime, you should not be convicted
So
of
I
that.
think what you're actually saying is you're saying you want to change possession crimes. Is that maybe a better way of saying it?
I would like to redefine the whole marijuana in general.
There we go.
I think that
Okay.
it should be reclassified as a medicine
I got you. Now I'm clear.
instead of an narcotic.
All right. So look, Vinoo, let's talk about this. I mean, you deal with possession and intent and all those things. I mean, two sides of this. I don't think Eric was actually talking about nonviolent crimes. That was he was saying, but I think what he meant was more of a possession or intent crime. So what I think he was talking about. Not that the average person knows, but clearly there's a difference between, murder 1, 2, and 3, and what did you intend and what did you not intend. And go ahead, talk about that.
Look, I think also to somewhat disagree with you, Larry. When you
Please.
talk about crimes. Look, crimes are crimes. Obviously, if you're stealing, and that's a crime. There's no doubt
Sure.
about that. But often what we found, when I say we, and I'm going back to my days, 15 plus years ago as a
Sure.
prosecutor, because I'm not dealing with this stuff as a criminal defense lawyer, right?
Right.
So we saw that often many people who were committing crimes. I mean, I remember having to prosecute women who'd steal Similac, baby formula.
Right.
Stuff would break my heart,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
I would see that. And you saw that somebody had a record of 15, 20 petty larcenies on their record. And our guideline said you had to set bail,
Right.
right? Well,
So you're literally putting a mother in jail.
yes.
Right.
And on top of that, when you have that many petty larcenies, and in between you'd often see a drug possession,
Sure.
CPS, CPCS, criminal possession of controlled substance, 7th degree. It usually wasn't marijuana, right? And so you
wouldn't
see
it help
that
to just
multiple
knock
times.
them out the top?
No, what say again?
So wouldn't that just to help knock the criminal possessions off the top so that you can get to crime and not crime?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So I think what he's saying is, wouldn't it be better if we just didn't have possession crimes and we could focus on the real crimes? That's what he's trying to say. Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead.
maybe. I mean, what I'm saying is that all
would
these
help.
people that you'd see in there,
Right.
they really needed help. They often
got
had
you.
drug
Right.
addictions,
Sure.
and they needed the drug program. And here's where
Well, this goes back to what you were saying
idea-
earlier, that you have given them help versus jail.
Right. And the idea, though, and what they hang over their head, right, is these are diversion programs, which was if you get charged with something that's drug related and you have a drug addiction, they hold jail over you as a
got it.
way to try to ensure that you don't commit another crime. I don't
Right.
think that works.
Got
I
it.
think the people with the addictions are going to stay addicted. They have to figure out and deal with that. And it isn't necessarily the threat of jail, because particularly with a lot of guys on the street, they get 3 meals in jail, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Rather than,
Yeah.
than,
Well,
than
well,
fishing.
isn't it a little bit about the probation thing where you keep them on probation and then they can't stay out of jail because they're constantly on probation, and
Yep.
the
That's a big problem,
littlest
too.
little thing
Yep.
drops them down that
Right.
they're going back.
Yeah, no. I think probation reform is another issue. You're exactly correct. That's another issue we have to have reform on.
Right.
100%.
And incrementalism. I agree with
agree.
you, Larry, on this. I think you got to do things, a bit at a time. And I think New York has just caught up with some of the other states.
Right. Right.
I think
Right.
Texas and Florida and North Carolina realized that some people that were innocent were executed.
Oh, yes.
and they
that's right,
said,
yes.
and they learned years later that prosecutors withheld evidence that could have cleared them, and they made the sensible choice by having closer to much more required mandated open file discovery.
Right.
So that's a step in the right direction that New York is going in. I think the bail reform is the right. Can it be tweaked a little? Yeah. Right. But I think that when you look at this stuff and you look at what some people are charging for, and the DAs in both Manhattan and Brooklyn, and Brooklyn was my old office, and Eric Gonzalez is a good man. They try to do the right thing.
sure.
Try to decriminalize it before it's decriminalized by King Andrew. Right?
right,
King
yes.
Andrew still hasn't decriminalized
Absolutely. Still has
marijuana.
exactly right.
Right?
Yes.
So doesn't that go to the top spot where somebody running for president would actually have to handle that.
Well, I would. This is a valid point you bring up, right? Many times people get upset about decriminalizing marijuana and cannabis, and the point is, why hasn't one of the last 8 presidents simply taken cannabis off the Schedule 1 list? Just take it off the Schedule 1 list.
Well,
I prison
think
lobby,
anything
Larry.
that is a medical benefit to
The
any
prison
of the
lobby.
populace should actually be brought through.
And look, you're preaching to the choir here, brother. You are preaching to the choir. I'm with you 100%.
I know. I'm running for president myself.
I see that. I'm with you, brother. You and I are on the same page 100%. So I want to say thank you for calling. I really appreciate it.
Well, you have a good day, Larry.
All right. Have a good one. All righty. That was interesting conversation, right? Yeah. That was good. So I guess the next question, because once you get, one piece of bail reform, what's the next increment, right? Is it discovery reform if you don't have that? Obviously, New York now has that. Or is it...
Well, prosecutors are fighting it.
Oh, right, yep. Right. So maybe that's the next push, right? Or is it... Got
to get it moved at the
probation reform?
I think probation reform's a great...
That's the next step?
Step to hit. I think that probation officers have too much power, and I think that there has to be monitoring, but there has to be reform, and there's too much discretion.
Oh, that same word, yes,
for some of these probation officers.
There we go.
And too much abuse.
Okay,
with a lot of these people.
Okay. Good. All right. I'm going to the call if I can. I'm going to head over to Colorado. My New Yorkers don't want to talk to me today. No worry. I still love you, New York. Head over to Colorado. I'm going to grab Eric from Colorado. Eric, how are you?
Doing great. How about you, Liberty Brother Larry?
I'm doing great. Talk to me.
I was just wondering if there's some way where we could tie prosecution money to defense money and balance that out. They'll throw millions of dollars convicting people that can't even afford their own lawyer.
So what do you mean? You mean
I like it.
You like it already? Yes, he likes it already. Are you saying how do you want to link them? I'm a little confused by what you mean by linking.
Well, use their prosecution funding as a scale. If they're going to have a budget for prosecuting somebody for say, $100,000, then for their defense, the defense should get $100,000.
Never going to happen.
Made available to them to make sure that they can
it's a great idea.
Defense.
That's a great idea. I love that. So there's a budget, right, that everybody gets, right? Everyone gets whatever, $100,000 for their defense. 50. I'm sorry for the case. $50,000 goes to the defense, and $50,000 goes to the prosecutor. What an amazing concept. But that's kind of weird, though, right? Would it be that if you got the $50,000 or whatever the number is, I made that up, obviously, does that mean you can't use your own money? Or is there some kind of means testing, right? So if you make X amount of dollars per year, then you don't get the money. Is it scaled? Is it scaled based upon what you did? Like you get, $5,000 for a misdemeanor, right? $20,000 per felony or something like that. I mean, how would you even work a system like that?
Well, that's a real good question because I'm not a fan of spending more money at the state level in the first place.
That's what I'm saying. That might get way expensive.
Exactly, but
and then
if it's worth it to the state to prosecute this poor feller for and I'm going to throw $500. We're going to throw this guy in jail. Well, isn't it worth to at least spend $500 for his defense, as far as society goes, to make sure they're not abusing that power?
Well, I mean, and then in theory, if we walk down this road, right, you would have to budget it every year, right? You'd have to say X county or X state or gets a certain amount of money, and at one point you'd have to stop prosecuting, right? You've run out of money.
That'd be a good point, or whether you.
So I guess the murder spree begins in December. Is that how that works?
There you go.
The murder spree begins in December because you can't prosecute me because you got no cash.
Well, it would probably have to, you'd either have to get back next year what you spent this year, or know what you spent this year because that's what you collected for last year. I don't know how you'd have to work the logistics out, but my concern is when you got either people that can't afford an attorney that the power of the government is thrown at them and they don't care how much they spend to throw them in jail.
No, I completely agree.
And you can have a person who's done fairly well for themselves and produced a lot and saved a lot that is basically tortured into pleading guilty for something they didn't do because they don't want to be bankrupted trying to fight it.
No, it's a valid point. So, I mean, it's an interesting concept. I don't know. What do you think about the concept?
I think it's great in theory, just not practical. Obviously, look, society's not at a point where they look at prosecutors in a way and say, scrutinize, or cops to say, hey, we're going to give you the same amount of money to defend a guy as it will be to prosecute a guy. I think in theory, it makes sense, particularly if you look at the constitutional framework that our founders have, right? This is exactly created, and the rights it created to protect against a state or a government that's gone too far. But the reality is there's going to be certain budgets that prosecutors' office have. There's going to be certain budgets that the public defenders have. And if you look at places, particularly like New Orleans or Louisiana, where the prosecutors there are beyond woefully funded, this is a huge thing and needs to be corrected. There has to be some correction. So what you're talking about, Eric, is not far from, or I should say that there needs to be some correction, especially in places like Louisiana.
But what happens when, this is the hardest part, right? Jeffrey Dahmer, right? The guy, for those who may not be old enough, the guy who literally ate his victims, right? Literally killed them and ate them. They found like body parts in his refrigerator.
Right.
So to prosecute
I don't think he's talking about that. I think he's talking about.
But I'm saying for someone like that, right? For that type of case, right? For that type of case, that might cost the prosecution, assuming he doesn't plea, right? He did, but assuming that he doesn't plea, if he wants to fight that thing, that's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Sure.
Do we want the state to give literally a cannibal hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend himself?
No, but in those cases,
yeah.
Right. No, but in those cases, remember, they have budgets. So both the DA's office, the state's attorney's office, depending on where you are in the country, or the Commonwealth's office,
sure,
is going to budget what they think is appropriate. The public defender's office is also going to budget what they think is appropriate to defend a case like that, right? So both things are in play here. And those are decisions that are made. Because ultimately, if a case is going to go to trial, the public defender's office can open up its coffers, and at least here in New York, and doesn't appear to be the case in a place like Louisiana, which is beyond woeful.
Right. So I guess this goes another place which we're dealing with right now, with the Weinstein case, right? Does a guy like Jeffrey Dahmer, does a guy like Weinstein?
Larry, what a comparison!
I am, because people hate them both.
I don't think Weinstein is eating people, from what I understand.
No, but people hate them both. I think people hate Weinstein as much as Dahmer, if not more. People hate him. Right? There's a vitriolic hatred of him.
Right.
Does that guy, either of them, deserve a fair trial? I don't think most people, the vast majority of Americans, would say both of those people are bad guys. Let's just put them away forever.
Right. Look, I think the Weinstein case is the perfect example of the state going way too far right now.
But Weinstein is a bad guy. Would you say he's not a bad guy?
He may be a bad guy. Doesn't mean he's a rapist.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's the larger issue here, right? He's the face, or he's what set off the whole Me Too movement with the whole story. Well, there's a lot more to that, right? Okay. And what's happening in the case, and I've been, as you know, Larry, I've been covering or commenting regularly for Court TV
on this. Yep.
Talking about Weinstein. When Weinstein was arrested, I was in CBS News studio at 7 a.m. They asked me to come in to narrate as he surrendered himself. And so I've commented on Weinstein from when he was first arrested by the DA to even last week. I was on Friday morning on Court TV. The issue, what they're doing in this case, what people don't get, and you asked the question, does he deserve a fair trial? And this is what I've posed to, on social media, and when I talk about this when I'm on the news. Does he deserve a fair trial? A lot of people will say, no,
he's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy. Put him away. And what people don't get is what the state of New York is doing. The DA's office is doing to Harvey Weinstein. They've been doing to countless numbers of men, particularly minority men, for years and eons. They are throwing out the rule book, right? And it's one of the things that drives me crazy is that all these people who particularly certain persuasion, the L word, right? The liberals, right? And that's what New York City is, right? They love the rule of law when it comes to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is subverting the rule of law. He's not going along with the process. He's ignoring the process. They don't want to hear it when it comes to Harvey Weinstein.
Okay.
Right? And so
Look what you did, Eric. It's your fault. You brought this up.
Yeah. Nobody wants to give Harvey Weinstein a fair trial.
Wrong question there.
That's good.
And
it's
so
not whether or not maybe.
Oh, hold on, Eric. Go, Eric. Go.
I was going to say it's not maybe whether or not what this dirtbag or that dirtbag defense of her trial, or whether or not we as a society deserve a justice system in which we're guaranteed a fair trial.
Oh, good point. I like that. I like this. You've changed. Look, there, he flipped the switch on us. He did. He flipped the script on us, man. Look at that. I like that. I mean, but I think that's what you're kind of saying, aren't you? I mean, you're saying that even Weinstein deserves a fair trial, even if he is a bad guy or a good guy, or you don't know what guy he is, because we all should have that.
I've said this, over and over again. It's a protection of all people, particularly those that people you find repulsive, like a Harvey Weinstein. That if you ensure that Harvey Weinstein is treated fairly, then you're going to ensure that the people that don't have the resources that he has, right, which is to hire a large defense team to actually challenge the nonsense that the DA's office is pulling in his case, because what they're doing is challenging everything that they're doing, right? And
so you're saying Weinstein actually helps the non-Weinstein, is what you're saying?
Yeah, because if law is set ultimately, and my hope is that that either the judge will do the right thing, or if he doesn't, which there are indications that there have been a number of bad rulings, that an appellate court will ultimately do the right thing. That helps all criminal defendants who are being railroaded, particularly in these types of cases, in sex crimes cases, because there is absolutely no presumption. I've said this for years. There's no presumption of innocence in our judicial system. Sure. There's a presumption of guilt. Multiply that by exponentially in a sex crimes case.
Oh, sure. Right. Yes.
When somebody's accused of a sex crime, and you take that and you take Harvey Weinstein, who is supposedly the personification of evil, but what you're doing is actually ask yourself, okay, 2 women have said that he sexually assaulted them. Well, then why, if he sexually assaulted, why are you bringing in 5 other women to say he did this from 30 years ago?
Right.
And all this other stuff. And all these things that wouldn't otherwise be admissible in a criminal trial because, well, maybe you have issues with their testimony. Maybe this district attorney is worried about re-election because, the New Yorker reported that other women came forward and they didn't prosecute. Well, maybe they've had issues. And now they're trying to bully and throw things on top and see what sticks.
I mean, this is Eric. I'm sorry, we've totally taken over your question. I apologize, but my issue here is not just what you just said. You said 2 women here are accusing him of sexual assault, but if you read the paper, he raped 30 women. Right. I mean, that's what the paper says. He raped 30 women.
No, they're very clever. They say sexually harassed or assaulted. Whoa!
Yes.
Whoa! Hold on.
Big difference. I agree.
Doing something, in the course of employment, saying, "Hey, if you want to get this job in this movie, sleep with me," versus, physically overpowering a woman.
Yes.
To force yourself on that woman, I think it's 2 different things.
Agreed. And the problem is...
you agree, Larry.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the majority of people today agree.
And that's my problem, right? The issue is, I've done this before. I've said, look, harassment is not assault. Assault is not rape. These are 3 separate crimes. And what people always say to me is, oh, so he should get off and get nothing? It's not 0 or 100, right? There are different levels of crimes, right? Just like the caller before was saying, some crimes are possession, some crimes are intent. I think there's a difference between harassment and assault and rape. They're all bad and they're all crimes. But when I start making women who were harassed and I start saying that they're raped, I've literally belittled the women who were raped.
Right.
right? I don't want to belittle the women who were actually raped. That's a harsher thing to deal with. Don't get me wrong. If you're harassed or you're assaulted, I'm sure it takes time to heal. I'm sure it can be horrible in your psyche. I'm sure it could be physical scars. I've never happened to me, but I can assume that's true, of course, as a logical human being. I can assume that's true. There's a different level if you are forcibly raped. It's different. All crimes, all bad, just different. And I think you find that in an attempt to be almost to put him in jail before he's even been tried, everything is rape.
Yeah, and I think particularly in this situation, people are throwing that. I think it's really awful for the papers to conflate all of these actual allegations that involve physical force versus a coercive employment tactic, right?
Sure.
I mean, there's a situation here that's the system in Hollywood.
Horrible
system.
Got to change.
Right? It has
Yep.
to change, and it looks like it has, and
Yep.
there are all these things that are there in place. But, to say that he is a predator committing sexual assaults when it's clear. I mean, this woman, one of the two main complainants, testified yesterday and talked about him being ugly and disfigured and about his private parts being deformed or something like that. Well, then why did you sleep with him so many times after this supposedly happened?
Right.
I mean, this begs the question. And now what is the DA doing? Bringing on people like the Sopranos mistress from 30 years ago saying that he had done this to her. Why?
I got you.
Right?
Okay.
I mean, you're trying to say, and one of the
You're trying to
fundamental
make him worse than
principles
he is.
of
You're
criminal
moving him
law
towards that.
means that you could have committed X crime on this day, but that doesn't mean you committed Y crime. Right? So, if I charged with attacking you, Larry, and knocking you out, just because I knocked somebody else out doesn't mean that I'm guilty of knocking you out. Right?
Sure.
I'm just putting it in simpler terms.
Yeah.
And that's a fundamental principle of the criminal law. And you can't use something else and bootstrap that to try to do a conviction. And basically that's what the DA is doing. That's what the judge is allowing. And he's not getting a fair trial.
All right, Eric, did we kind of answer your long-winded? Did we kind of answer your question?
That's just an idea I just keep running across, just something to prevent people that can't afford to defend themselves from fighting the almighty government.
No, it's actually may not be a bad idea to do locally, right? It may not be bad for some local jurisdiction to try it or test it and see if it would work. I mean, I don't know if it works. It sounds interesting. I see a lot of possible flaws with it. But hey, if someone wants to give it a shot, hey, they can give it a shot and see how it works. But my worry is, crime spree is going to be in December because that's when you got no money to prosecute everybody unless you're going to keep everybody in jail for the next 30 days till the budget resets, I guess. I'm not sure. But anyway, thank you, my friend. I appreciate the phone call.
Have a good day.
Have a good one.
Hey, Larry, before we go any further, can I give a little shout out?
Please.
Yeah.
Yes,
So right before we came on, as I mentioned, my older son, Ian, who's 8 years old, he's like, Dad, why aren't you home tonight? I said, I got to go on Uncle Larry's show. And he goes, you mean the Sharpe way?
Yes. See?
He's asleep right now, but I do want to, I want to give him a shot. So when he gets the tape, he'll hear that.
Ian knows. Well done, Ian. Yes, he knows. This is the show of shows. Absolutely. The show of shows. So I want to move to another legal issue, which is not the criminal side as much. In theory, it could be. It's impeachment, right? I think Democrats today were trying to get one more push to try to get the president removed. And I think on Wednesday they vote. Is that right? I think it's Wednesday they're going to vote. That's my
understanding, yeah.
They're going to vote and decide if they're going to remove him or not. The vast majority of people, like 99.9% of people, are saying he's not getting removed. What are we doing? Do you have a view on this? Either way, does it matter, not matter? Is this like the caucus and we should even talk about it?
I think it matters.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a sad state, and I think that the Democrats have done what they're supposed to have done, which is bring the case to the Senate, right? Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be a trial in the Senate, right? The hearings in the House are supposed to be that, hearings. And they hear testimony and then they move to vote. I've not heard of the concept, I'm just not familiar with it, of a trial without witnesses.
Okay.
I'm just not familiar with it. I just don't know. I mean, my understanding, and I know this has only been, this is only the third impeachment of a U.S. president in American history. But my limited understanding of history, and you're way more of a history buff than I am, Larry, is that there were witnesses.
Sure.
I know that President Clinton testified.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
He cooperated with the impeachment process.
Mm-hmm.
I just am stunned. I am saddened. I give credit to Susan Collins and Mitt Romney.
But why? Is it because they didn't vote for witnesses? Is that what you think they should have? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And I think that what's been brought up, and I know he's one of your I don't know if he's one of your boys, but I know he's a certain darling in the libertarian community, Rand Paul. Mm-hmm. I think can I use an expletive?
You can say whatever you want.
All right, yeah. He's full of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I mean, this whole thing with naming the whistleblower,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it was just outrageous.
So to be clear, Rand Paul is not a libertarian. He's a Republican.
Yes.
Just want to be clear.
Did he say he's a libertarian?
Sometimes he says that, but I'm just saying he is Republican.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this guy goes on, he names a guy. He was specifically, look, Chief Justice Roberts told McConnell that not to name the whistleblower,
mm-hmm.
right? Because he had gotten outed by, I think, Real Clear Politics or something weeks
mm-hmm.
ago or something like that. The guy, is a whistleblower.
So hold on. There are two separate issues here, though, right? One is the witnesses and one is the whistleblower. You conflate the two?
No, I'm just saying everything that's wrong.
Got you.
With this whole process has happened in these last few days.
Got
right?
it. Okay.
I mean, the idea that these guys are out there and you said this, Larry, and I've totally adopted this position from listening to you on this, right? Where is this Republican Party going to go after Trump?
That's my concern.
You know?
Absolutely. What's going to happen? One day we wake up, and Yang brings this up, right? Yang has brought this up more than once. One day they're going to wake up and Trump's not going to be president, whether that's in 2021 or whether that's in 2025.
Right.
Oh, no. It's 2021 or 2025.
Right.
One day we're going to wake up and Trump's not going to be president one of these days. What does the Republican Party do when it has created an environment that is so much based upon one personality?
Right.
How do you get around that? How do you deal with that, particularly when the country as a whole is moving left, right? The country as a whole is moving left, and you've built your current party around one massive personality. What happens when he's not president anymore? And then what happens if when you decide to reboot the party in whatever form they decide to reboot the party, he's on the outside going, you guys suck, let me keep tweeting, right? It's got to be my party. How do you recover from that? And I worry, look, I'm hoping that libertarians will be in power by then, so it won't matter. But unless that happens, what do we do? I agree. What happens?
Look, I just, as a citizen, I just find it, appalling. I was on Newsmax last week, right? It's,
very pro-Trump.
Yes, and way to the right of Fox News, right? I've been on Fox News, and they started, talking about it. I was there to talk about the whole Justice Roberts refusal to let your boy Rand Paul,
My boy.
I got to give you some grief, Larry.
I love it.
I got to give you. I got to give you some grief. I got to give you some libertarian grief here.
Okay,
right?
go ahead.
Rand Paul from not allowing his questioning. They're like, how dare he? I was like, what, you mean the Republican appointed Chief Justice did not allow a Republican to say things? I said, yeah, he injected himself. And they were like, that's what he shouldn't be doing. I said, no, he understands decorum and what shouldn't be done, right? And he has the right to not. And if the Republicans, if they didn't like what he did, they could have taken an immediate vote.
What do you mean?
They could have said, okay, should we allow the question?
And
they overruled him. They chose not to do that, did
Got
it?
it.
So
Right.
All Rand Paul did was go out and tweet about it and get his thing and become a darling to make sure that he got reelected in the next election.
So you think that whole thing was only political, nothing else?
For Rand Paul.
Yep. Okay.
I mean, the press he got, and he's out there now. The far right loves him, right? Didn't always love him,
It's
right?
true.
That and they love him, right? They're like, oh man, he's out there.
So is Roberts the bad guy now on the right?
Yeah. Well, he's been the bad guy before on the right, right?
Yes, he has. Yes, he has.
He saved Obamacare.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Yep.
So he's been the bad guy, and I respect Chief Justice Roberts because he cares more about the rule of law. And he's already criticized King Trump. You want to talk about King Andrew? Let's talk about King Trump. So what I said on Newsmax the other day was, I'm sorry, how dare, you mean you can't criticize this guy? You're not going to even allow the process because you elected a king, right? And the guy, the host was like, yeah. And then he tried to bring it up. But we wanted to impeach Obama and they couldn't impeach Obama. I said, okay, let's get back to what we're talking about.
The thing that bothers me most about this, I happen to be watching when Dershowitz basically says,
God.
Anything the president does and he thinks is good is unimpeachable. But note what he didn't say. He didn't say it wasn't criminal. He said it was unimpeachable. So once you say that, we've just gone back to the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, for those who don't know, they had a rule on dictators. When the Romans had a dictator, prior to when it was an empire, when it was still a republic, they would elect a dictator. And they would give the dictator 1 or 2 year terms. They'd say, you are dictator for 1 year or 2 years. And during that time, you couldn't be prosecuted for anything. But once your term was up, you could be prosecuted for what you did. So if it didn't end up well, right? If you want to go murder all these people, you could do it and we couldn't prosecute you. But boy, it better end well. Because if it doesn't end well, you're in trouble. Things like seize your lands, take your property, put you in jail, execute you, insert thing here. It's almost like he wants us to go back to that we're no longer electing a president, but we're electing literally a king. For 4 years, you are the Lord and Master of the nation. You will do whatever, we will do whatever you say, all hail for the 4-year king. And then once we're done, I guess then we arrest you? Is that how that works? I don't know. But by then, I'm sure you have your own secret police where we can't arrest you anymore. I don't know how that works. But that, to me, was the worst part. The idea that there wasn't an immediate backlash from everybody, like not just Democrats or Republicans, but literally from everybody saying, no, I don't care if you agree with Trump or love Trump or hate Trump. I don't want a king. But what we've done is we've actually said, no, as long as he's our king.
He went so far, Larry, as to say that him getting reelected is in the national interest.
Yes.
Therefore, he can't be impeached for this. And what he did to help ensure his reelection is in the national interest. I mean, I don't even know where to begin on that.
In anthropology, we actually call this idea of people thinking this way the peasant mindset. And the peasant mindset means that when things are bad, we don't do anything. We just sit back and say things like, if only we had a good king. If only we had a good king. We don't do anything. That's the peasant mindset. And when things are good, we go, all hail the king. That's why things are good, because we have a good king, right? We have a good king. If you remember from the movie Excalibur, one of my favorite movies, they bring up this idea. They say, you are the land is you, right? As you blossom, the land will blossom. As you wither, the land will wither, right? That's an old peasant mentality from thousands of years ago that we're trying to reinstall now. That basically he can say, I am the state.
Yeah.
Right? And that's it. And what I say is, and if you're lucky, get a good king. And if you're unlucky, get a bad king. Shut up and deal with the peasants. It drives me crazy. That's the issue that drives me crazy. And everyone should have been upset. And I feel like almost nobody was.
I'm with you, Larry. And what on another level, I'll take it even a step further, right? Dershowitz is a lawyer.
Yes.
Right? He went to law school. He teaches at Harvard Law. And
as you do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, he's a tenured professor. I'm just a guest lecturer.
Okay. Yeah.
So he is this man to get up there and say that he can do no wrong.
Yes.
Just blows my head. And this is the same thing with the attorney tool general that we have, right? Bill Barr,
right? Who's
Who's basically saying the same thing, who is putting forth Trump's, basically absolving him of everything and saying that, and I mean, this is the double take of people that I have that we're supposed to be like there's a thing that we're taught in law school right from the beginning. It's called the smell test.
The smell test.
Yes.
I like this test. The smell
And
test.
if it doesn't smell right, it ain't gonna fly, right? I cannot believe that Professor Dershowitz got on and said that if he doesn't, that if he thinks since being reelected is in national interest, he can do no wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it boggles my mind.
So, if anybody wants to call in, by the way, regarding the impeachment, happy to take your phone calls. Give us a buzz, 573-427-5463. Want to grab a couple things from the interwebs, series of tubes, all it is. The biggest thing we're getting is from bail reform. People still upset about bail reform, and the biggest thing they bring up all the time is, what about the victims of violent crimes when those people are let loose?
But these aren't violent crimes they're being charged with, and that's the important thing you got to remember. And ultimately, people have to understand that these people are eventually going to get out. And so you have to ask yourself, the state can't hold these people in perpetuity, right? Most of these people are going to be released. It's a question of when.
Isn't it true that over 90% of all people who go to jail get out at one point?
They will. It's just a question of when,
Right.
right? I don't know the exact. It's a very high number. And they're going to get released and integrated. So you have to figure out a way to integrate them into society. And remember, these are people who have been convicted,
Right.
right? So where's the presumption of innocence, right? This is something that people should be understand.
The thing that I've said when people have asked me this question, right? They've said, well, Larry, there's a victim now, right? So now this guy, whatever, he beat somebody up or he did something violent or whatever. Well, the law does say if it's violent, the person can actually get bail, right? Can set bail on him.
Well, it depends on the level, right?
Right, yes.
So misdemeanors, there are certain misdemeanor violent charges, assault, right?
Sure.
But it's not violent under the law as a felony.
Sure. So if a guy's trying to beat you up, right, and he gets arrested, if it's a violent felony, they can set bail.
If it's a felony, not
Right.
a misdemeanor.
Violent felony,
Right.
then they can set bail. But here's the issue. If the guy's rich, he can get out anyway.
Correct.
So what you're telling me is, I'm okay if a rich guy comes and beats me up. I'm just not okay if a poor guy comes and beats me up.
That's a perfect way of putting it.
That's what you're saying, right? If you're saying that, right, you're saying, as long as the guy who beats me up is rich, I'm actually okay with it.
Right.
But if he has no money, I'm not getting beat up by some poor guy.
Right.
Right? So bail doesn't mean you're not going to get beat up, right? Doesn't mean that.
Right.
I'm hoping that no one comes to beat you up anyway. And as a general rule, that doesn't happen. And if there is an actual fear of that, you'll get an order of protection, or they'll try to protect you as a general rule, right? I mean, obviously, there are errors that are made, but generally, that's true. So I'm not sure that's actually a valid argument in my eyes, right? So I only want rich guys to beat me up. The other thing is there's an issue with, discovery piece, where now what they're saying is the person who, in this case, right, you beat me up, right? So now you beat me up at my house. So now you can now come to my house and to check out the evidence. You can come back to my house and, well, you beat me up. So now I'm basically being stalked now because you can come to my house now.
I'm not sure about that.
But that's what I've heard. And my argument,
I don't think so.
My argument was several-fold.
so.
Number one, if I'm scared, there'll be order of protection. And maybe a private investigator might come through. But if it's a private investigator, the person's rich. They would make bail anyway. Right? If someone has enough money to hire a private investigator to come check out my house, the person's going to make bail anyway. Doesn't matter. The average person, if they can't afford bail, they sure as hell can't afford a private investigator.
Right.
So how is that even an argument? This is what would happen. Look what could happen. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. Other states who've had this have not had this happen. This has not been a thing. Right? If the guy or gal, usually it's a guy because most of these guys are guys. But if the guy can't afford bail, he can't afford a private investigator.
Right.
Right.
And I think that everybody is, and I said this at the beginning of the show tonight, it's about fear mongering.
Yeah.
And what they're doing, and ultimately what's behind this is the prison industrial complex in this country. And the fact that, now finally cops and prosecutors they're shining a light on this stuff, right?
Sure.
It started with the cops, but ultimately this is getting into prosecutors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, prosecutors are hallowed in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to Law and Order.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Right. Jack McCoy, right? Everything is about, boom, Special Victims Unit, right?
Absolutely.
These guys,
Yes.
these are saints. They are doing God's work, right? A lot of them aren't.
Well, they're
right?
just humans.
Right. They
Right?
are.
They're humans.
You get that, Larry.
Yes.
But the mass population doesn't get that.
Got it.
And so a lot of people get this question, oh, you're a defense attorney. How can you represent these scumbags? It's like, how do you know they're scumbags? How do you know, right?
There are 2 points, right? Because you're accused doesn't mean you're guilty, number one. Because you're
Most
accused...
people don't believe that, Larry.
Correct.
Most people don't believe that.
But not just that. We have to understand that because I'm accused of several things doesn't mean I did all those things or the level of those things or anything is true, right? I mean, a prosecutor can say, I'm going to convict you of, murder one and tell you that, and you're going to be in jail for life. When he doesn't even have that, the possibility of convicting me on that, right? He can still tell me that.
Right.
And as you've told me, they can even change the charges. They can adjust and shift, knock them down, raise them. So just because
or overcharge in the hopes that you plead and throw something low on there to be like, okay, well, I don't want to even take the chance of facing these charges, which, you can have a runaway jury or something or some angry people and then be like, all right, you know what, I'm just going to take this.
Absolutely, right? So
most people don't have the stomach for that or the resources.
And most people don't get it. And the sad part is most people don't get it until it affects them.
Yep.
Then they're like, well, this system sucks. I've been telling you in a Sharpe way for like a year. Yeah, it sucks. Now you care because you got arrested because someone
you've been
love
saying
got
it a lot
arrested?
longer than that, Larry.
I
for
have.
years,
I've been saying it for a long time. I absolutely have. Again, look, my mother went through the system. My mother, I saw my mother go through the system, and my father was a guard at Rikers. So I've seen both sides of this.
Yeah.
I have seen my mother as a convicted felon. I've seen my father as a guard in Rikers Island. I've seen people go through this close to me, both sides of this, which is why I have a soft spot for the corrections officers too, who are also in a very bad spot because they take the brunt of this, right? And the worst part about the corrections officers is they're not even listening to them. Like no one even cares about them. They're trapped in the middle, being punished by both sides. They get punished by inmates and they get punished by the governor. And both sides, they have no idea what's going on. And so I feel bad for them too. On top of it's a bad system in general. But so I think people are still upset about the idea, and they're talking about what if it's sexual assault, which I remember specifically the bill does say that if it is sexual in nature or domestic violence, that again you can set bail.
Right. Well, the sexual part, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
which means by default, all you're saying is if some guy comes to rape me, he better be rich. That's all you're saying, right? That argument is saying if a guy's gonna come rape me, he better be rich. That's what you're saying with that argument, right? Because the rich guy.
Well, they're going to set
anyway.
bail anyway on those cases. It's a question of who's going to make it, right?
Yes, the wealthy guy does.
Right, but I mean, on those cases, they're not eligible for remand. Remand is being held without bail. Mm-hmm. So regardless of money or not, you can't remand on most of these kind of cases. Even. Because what people are not understanding is that these are misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies that you're not setting bail on, right?
Well, that's about that I don't think people understand, right? The average person hears assault and assumes it's a felony and the guy beat a guy over the head with a bat.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's what you think of when you think of
That's
assault.
under New York law, assault in the second degree.
There we go. See, it's assault in the second
assault
degree.
with a deadly weapon.
With a deadly
AKA
weapon.
assault with a deadly weapon.
There we go. See, and most people don't know that. They
That's
just
at
hear
minimum a D violent felony.
See that? The guy. That's why I have him here. See, that's exactly why. Yes. So tell me what an assault misdemeanor is. What is that? Can you give me an example of what one would be?
Yeah, I mean, you can, you and I, Larry, we're pushing back, throwing back some beers. I know
Right.
you don't drink, so
Right.
it's not even.
Right. Sure.
I'm going to use you. Just
I'm
make
the bad
fun.
guy. I got it.
Right.
I decided to get it.
we're at a bar and we've both been having a couple beers and we started getting into fighting matches, and then I punch you,
Mm-hmm.
and I give you a black eye,
Mhm.
right? So assault in the third degree is a Class A misdemeanor in New York State, right? In a lot of other states, they call it assault and battery. So assault is the threatening to hit, and battery in other states is when they actually get hit.
Gotcha.
A lot
okay.
of states do that, but in New York, assault is actual completing of the crime.
Gotcha,
And,
okay.
and threatening is often, for lack of a better, attempted assault or
Got it.
the attempt to
Okay.
try to hurt you.
Gotcha.
I give you a black eye.
So I get a black eye because we're drunk.
Right, we get
Right.
into a fight. I'm just using the drunk.
Yeah, I
example,
got you.
right?
No, that
Right,
happens.
We
That
get into a
happens.
fight, and
Very often.
and you get a black eye. that is not rise to the level of felony, which
Got
is
it.
serious physical injury.
Right.
There is no weapon involved. Also, would be a thing for the felony.
Mm-hmm.
That is a Class A misdemeanor, right? Assault in third degree, which
So
is
let me ask the next question.
substantial pain or impairment of physical condition. These are the
Sure.
definitions.
So let me ask a question now. If they set bail and you can't make that bail, realistically, what's a high end or low end time you could actually spend sitting in jail on a misdemeanor like that? High end, low end, realistically, what could you spend? What's a low end you could spend in jail?
Months.
Months. 2 months? 3 months?
Could be longer than that.
Could be longer.
Yeah, you could be in jail for a year on something like that.
So
waiting
literally,
trial.
without bail reform, you and I get into a fight. You punch me in the eye. In a week, I'm fine. And I probably don't remember it because I'm drunk anyway.
Yep.
I just remember when I wake up, I go, oh, Vin must have hit me. Right? So I figure that out, right? So, but you now, literally, your life is ruined.
Yep.
Because you're in jail a year, which means you've lost your job. You probably lost your girlfriend or wife if you have one of those. Your kids haven't seen you in a year if you got kids, right? If you got family and friends, they all think you're a bad guy, jailbird, been in jail.
Yeah,
All that
usually
stuff
on a
happens.
first arrest. I mean, I'm probably not going to get it, but it depends on where you are, Larry.
Yes.
Right? In
And also
in,
who
in
I
the
am.
in the city, I'm probably not going to get bail.
Okay.
Right? Probably not going to get set, especially if I have no criminal record.
Right.
Nassau County, Westchester, upstate New York, bail's going to get set.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have the resources to make that bail, you could be in jail for a long period of time, because the time that it takes for the government to turn over discovery to your lawyer is excludable time. So time that doesn't get charged against you, against the defendant for speedy trial, discovery time. So one of the good things about the new discovery law is that it requires stuff to be turned over faster,
Got it.
right?
So you'll spend less time in jail.
In theory, we'll
Got it.
see. We'll see.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I wanted to say, because I think most people don't get it. They assume, well, it's an assault, so it's violent. This guy is trying to beat me up, and he's stalking me, and he's going to come after. You're going to come after me and chase me down.
By the way, that example I gave you with the black guy. So the definition of assault in the third degree, which is what constitutes a Class A misdemeanor for which you can spend up to a year in jail. This doesn't, if you didn't have impairment of physical condition or you didn't experience substantial pain, I may have gotten one shot, but maybe you weren't hurt. That may not even rise to the level of assault 3.
Ah, okay.
Right? It may be. It may rise to a level of a lighter charge.
Gotcha.
But you could end up being in jail for longer than the maximum penalty for that lighter charge. If you didn't have any vision problems, there was no impairment of your physical condition, and if you didn't experience substantial pain, like I got you, but you didn't feel any pain, you didn't even have to take Tylenol.
Gotcha.
You know, you just had a black eye the next day, but you weren't
Right.
really in pain. Well, then it doesn't make out assault 3. Then it makes out at most attempted assault 3. Meaning, like, instead of a year, you could face 90 days in jail.
So you could actually be in jail longer than what the
Be
actual
in jail
sentence
for a
could be.
year, depending on what it is and where you are in this state.
So now you get time served, and your life is ruined over that.
Right.
That is my issue, and this is why. And that, in my view, you tell me if you. I mean, this is your world. In my view, that bad outcome is far more common than the guy's gonna come stalk somebody and come to their house and look at them and that kind of
100%.
thing. It's far more common, not even close. It's
Right.
It's far more common that that's gonna happen.
But the New York Post is going to pick up the story of the person who does that. And of course, there are going to be people who out there should be, incarcerated. But like I said, I think the law should be amended to the fact that if you go out and you get rearrested in, let's say, 90 days for the same, within 90 days, then you should be able to get set up bail, even if it's a crime that otherwise you wouldn't set bail for.
So let me ask you what you think the results are going to be. What will the backlash be, if any, from prosecutors and police when all of a sudden they realize that as they're arresting people, they're not going to jail, right? They're getting arrested and they're getting released. Is there going to be a backlash? Is there something that's going to happen here? Are prosecutors going to tell cops to stop arresting? Are they going to stop pleading? Or to the other guy who called earlier, are prosecutors now going to do what you said? Purposefully overcharge. The other guy was talking about, say, oh, you swung you swung your fist at him. I think somebody saw a bottle in your hand, and that's now, a felony, and you're going to be in jail for 30 years. will their response, because as you said, when someone's in jail, the odds of them pleading shoot up tremendously, right? When
Yes.
they're in jail. Since now I'm a prosecutor, I can't get you in jail anymore because you got to get out. Do I, when I bring you in and arraign you, do I throw up 80,000 charges now to scare you before you leave? Is that a realistic backlash?
I think in terms of let's deal with the police first,
Okay.
right? So in terms of the police are given credit, at least here at the New York City Police Department. I'm not sure about other places, by the fact they make arrests. They're not given credit for a successful prosecution. So
Okay.
as long as the very worst thing, and I'm going to go back to my days in my youth when I was a prosecutor, cops wouldn't care what you did after you made the arrest, as long as the arrest went through.
Got it. Okay.
They don't give a damn, most of them. They don't care that the guy they arrest, because they'll go out and arrest him again, and they'll get double credit. They'll be like,
Got it.
this is easy, right?
This is
And
easy.
then they get promotions based on arrest.
Okay.
What they cared about is if you DP'd a case,
What's that mean?
declined to prosecute.
Oh,
Man.
I see.
mean, when I was there and was said, boom, you didn't have enough evidence. I mean, this is when cops and prosecutors would fight, right?
Gotcha.
Like, but, we're going to DP this. Man, that was like, I'd have supervisor on call, give me a call. What's going on? And I said, yeah, there was no probable cause to arrest, or, you know what? We're not putting this case through because you're alleging something serious unless we speak to the complainant.
Okay, sure.
Right? We need to speak to the complainant and we'll give them a certain amount of time, because then we have a situation. Is this complainant in the wind? Right?
What does that mean in the wind?
I mean, are they going to come forward?
Got it. Okay.
Right? So that means we're going to hold this guy for 5 days or 5 days on a misdemeanor, 6 days on a felony without a corroborating affidavit, either in terms of a misdemeanor, an affidavit, a written signed thing that this person did this to keep the case going forward.
Sure.
Because if you don't get that within 5 days on a misdemeanor, the guy gets released.
Got it.
Right? On a felony, if you don't get that indictment within 6 days, the guy gets released.
Got it.
So to avoid that situation, if we think this person's in the wind, hey, we try to call him, what's going on? This was the call that you had to make as a prosecutor. You're going to put this case through or decline to prosecute at this point.
So that's what the cops cared about.
Right. They did not want their DPs.
So you think
because
the
their
cops aren't gonna
DP
change?
took their stats away.
Got it. So you think that the cops are going to care that much in the long run?
They don't care.
What about the prosecutors?
The prosecutors care. I mean, so
how do they respond to
This
this?
is a culture, right? It depends on the office.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the place where you are, and within offices, it depends on who your supervisor is.
Okay.
Right. So
give me some bad examples of what could happen. What could we expect in the negative? What bad things could happen?
the overcharging, which you brought up, just as absolutely a possibility when you start charging people between and not thoroughly evaluating cases from the beginning, right? That question, that example I gave you, right? Back eye. So if I'm the prosecutor in the complaint room writing that case up, case is brought to me by the cops, and the cop is supposed to tell, okay, look, the DA is going to give you a call. I'm going to ask you, hey, Mr. Sharpe, I'm the prosecutor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you got into a fight with Vinoo Varghese
that guy's a jerk
at McSorley's
exactly.
at McSorley's around the corner.
Yeah.
I'm the assistant DA. Yeah, he's a jerk. What's your relationship with him?
We
Mr.
were
Sharpe?
picking up chicks, and he took my chick.
Oh, all right.
Yes,
Oh, so you guys know each other?
Yeah.
You guys used to be friends.
Not anymore.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
so
yeah,
what kind of injury did you sustain?
Oh, my personal injury attorney told me he crippled me.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sharpe. That's all I needed to know. But I mean, let's say you tell me.
Yeah, I told you.
prosecutor-
I said, look, no, I tell the truth. I said, look, we got into a fight. We were yelling and screaming about the Knicks.
Yeah, we could get into it.
So we got into a fight. I threatened him. He swung at me. I ran off after he hit me.
Okay.
That's what happened. I didn't go to the hospital. I took Tylenol. My eye really hurt really bad, and I couldn't see out of it this morning.
You've just made out the elements of assault 3.
There we go. So
well done.
There
You
we
were
go.
coached well by your personal injury lawyer.
See that? He was very good. Yes. But how about but your point is, what if I just say, I went home, I was mad, and that's it.
It stung a little bit. I went home, I put a little ice, and you have any problem seeing Mr. Sharpe?
No, I'm a tough guy.
Yeah,
no.
the next morning you didn't feel any pain.
Nope.
Just got a little black.
Yep.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that a prosecutor, that interview, is going to be like, could be cut short. And the guy's, oh, black eye, oh, injury, substantial pain, boom. Now you're overcharging.
Gotcha. So what
Right?
you're saying is when he hears this, he's now going to jump up and say everything. He's going to throw the book at me. He's going to say, I'm going to throw a book at you. I'm sorry. He's going to say that, you know, we have. Now, I've heard this before that he can actually lie to scare you, can't he? He can actually say, we got witnesses that got you yelling and saying, I'm going to kill you, Larry.
Not the prosecutor.
Who? He's not going to lie to you.
Prosecutor's not supposed to lie.
But he can, can't he?
And see, that's where he can get himself into
Tell me how.
trouble. Prosecutors have ethical rules that they have to follow. So a cop can lie to you in that situation. Right?
I see. Okay, so
you know,
cop
they're,
can.
you know, all right, you better tell us now because the guy's in the other room and he's giving you up. They can lie. They're allowed to.
So if a cop's got you in there, the cop can say, we got 4 witnesses.
Well, he's supposed to Mirandize you first, right?
Gotcha.
Assuming he Mirandized you and then he wants to talk. I mean, look, he's skating the line, and this is the kind of stuff that's not going to make it on the videotape, right?
Sure, of course.
This is the
Right.
stuff that's going to be thing. But a cop technically is allowed to tell you something. Prosecutor can't do that.
Okay, so but the cop will. Well, can. I shouldn't say will. The
Can.
cop can.
Can.
A cop might say, we got 4 guys saying, we got you, Varghese, 3 witnesses yelling, I'm going to kill you, Larry. I'm going to try to hurt you.
You know, I did hit Sharpe hard. Yeah.
There we go. Yes. So, but once you say that, now you've just made a terrible statement, haven't you?
Correct.
If you actually say that, right? And now the cops are going to be like, that's it. We got you. And that's what you mean by if we overcharge now, even though you would get out with bail reform, you might incriminate yourself before you get out.
Right.
And that's the goal, to incriminate you before you get out.
Yeah, and then force you to plead to something that, you know, is worse than you normally can do.
Got
right?
it.
That normally would
Okay.
have to in such a
Okay.
situation.
Good. All right. The reason why I bring it up is because that's what I could read a bunch of these, but they all say the same thing. They all say, what about the victims? What about the victims? What about the victims? That's what I hear constantly, right? And there's another issue is protection orders are worthless pieces of paper. That's, it's a valid point, isn't it?
Yes.
It
So
is.
so
Which
one of
is
the
why
things-
I'm a big Second Amendment supporter.
So
because
Yeah.
that helps defend you when the time comes, right?
So one of the things that, both, as a former prosecutor in my prosecutorial days and as a defense attorney defending people with this kind of thing, it's really more of my days as a former prosecutor, trying to explain this to people. But what's going to happen when the order of protection is going to, expire? So I said to him, I was like, look, order of protection says that, he's got to stay away from you, but if he wants to hurt you, he's going to hurt you.
Right.
Right? An order of protection is not a bulletproof shield.
Right. Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And speaking to your Second Amendment point, right?
Absolutely.
It's not a bulletproof shield.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not going to protect you from a knife going into your chest.
Right. Sure.
Right? Is it really, if somebody wants to get you, are they going to get you? They're going to get you, right? Is you concerned about the criminal contempt? Oh, I'm going to be charged with violating the order of protection,
Yeah, exactly.
When I really want to get you.
Right.
So that's the thing that people.
So someone's going to say, well, I would stab you to death, but I'll also get the order of protection, so I won't.
Yeah, because that piece of paper is going to
Yes.
stop me from stabbing you to death, right? Which
Right.
at most I'd get 7 years.
Right. Yes. I got you. Okay. So how do we deal with the issue that, the order of protection it's just a piece of paper? And what about the idea that when the guy comes out on bail, he might hurt somebody?
Well, somebody or the person that has the order of protection.
That person. Yeah.
So look, the reality is in most cases, the order of protection, it does serve, for most people, does serve as a deterrent. So while I'm giving you an example, and that we just talked about when they say it's worthless, it's really worthless if somebody's really trying to commit a violent
Right.
harm on you, right?
Right.
That's the piece of paper isn't going to stop someone from committing
But I think
a grossly violent act.
I think orders of protection actually do stop harassment.
Oh, I agree.
I think they actually
agree.
are a deterrent for harassment.
Absolutely, and it does deter most of that sort of potential crime
Right.
or violation, depending on how you define harassment.
Right.
And that's what it does. It does serve a purpose, and you don't really hear about too many cases where something was in effect for a year, and then on the very next day that the order of protection expired, that person went and
Yes.
harassed.
They were
them at
just
that
waiting
point.
for that.
I mean,
yeah.
you hear anecdotally something like that, but you
Right.
don't really see that, because then you would hear the New York Post writing about that more
Sure,
often, right?
sure.
So if the New York Post ain't writing about it, then it probably doesn't really happen, right?
Well, no, I think you're right, because this is what they would want to talk about, right? This is something that they would want to jump on board and have and be able to talk about. This is, look how bad it is, look how bad it is, look how bad it is.
Right.
So yeah, all right.
Because most people move on, right? Most people move on, right?
So what about what is there a downside to bail reform, or is it just all good? Is there actually a downside? Is there something that we should be worried about?
Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, I just think that obviously the law can be tweaked, right?
Sure.
I don't agree with, and we've said it already a few times, somebody getting arrested and getting arrested again for the same exact thing. That's
Right. I got you.
Doesn't make any sense.
But you're not that concerned. Good.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna go to something else if I could. Another question. How do you fix the idea of the lack of a speedy trial in New York that often happens? Is that the next reform? Is it speedy trial reform? We talk about many different pieces for this incrementalism piece.
Right.
Is that an issue?
So that was part of the discovery reform that was put in to get discovery faster. And as on the state level, all of us are trying to figure out what the new laws and when there's certain things. There are certain compliance states that prosecutors have to comply by.
Is there a number that we say is speedy trial? Like, is there a 30 days is a speedy trial, 90 days is a speedy trial?
Right.
Do we have a rule on what a speedy trial is?
Sure. It's 6 months for a felony, 90 days for a Class A misdemeanor, 30 days for a violation. I mean, it's
So if it's a felony, 6 months.
right.
If it's a misdemeanor,
That's under New York state law.
New York state law. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
On the federal side, a speedy trial, you're supposed to have a trial within 70 days, which never happens. by the
70
way.
days, 70.
7-0, which
Okay.
never happens because the discovery, on especially a complicated white-collar case, which is most of what we're dealing with, is going to be months and months, if not sometimes years.
Why?
Because if it's a large-scale financial case,
Right.
the government is gathering its data, and they've made an arrest, and it takes them months and months to produce that data.
So it takes the government 3 months to produce the data. That's
More than that,
6 months.
sometimes longer.
Okay. In the sake of argument, in this case, it takes 6 months.
Right.
So the 70 days begins at the end of 6 months?
Yeah, if no time has been charged. So if on the federal case you get arrested, usually you will waive time as a defense attorney at that point to start receiving discovery. So all that time is excluded, and then it won't start at the 6 months
It
because
won't.
at that point, once you've had all the discovery, as a defense lawyer, you need the time to evaluate that and file proper motions before a trial date is set.
How long could that be?
A couple more months after that.
So it could be 9 months before the 70-day starts.
Right. And usually you're not even getting into that because by the time that gets along, there's no time charged on a federal case.
Okay, so how about when it comes to states? Similar?
No, the state tends to move a little faster because the difference generally, at least here in Manhattan and Brooklyn, I'm going to use when I talk
Sure.
about crime, I talk about Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens, on both the state and the federal level, right? So most prosecutions that are comprised by the federal prosecutors in this area, right, Manhattan or Brooklyn, are what are called proactive prosecutions. It's at the district attorney at the state level, they're reactive, right? So at the reactive level, the cop,
Sees a crime and arrests you.
or somebody says, "Oh, he stole my purse."
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
They go chase the guy, they arrest him. Then the case isn't ready for the grand jury because the complainant may go on a vacation
Sure,
for
yeah.
a couple of days. I'll be back in a few weeks. At that point, he's out in 6 days at the
Got
state
it.
level. And then they may take up time before they can bring this case to a grand jury, a felony case. So the state prosecutors tend to eat more time. That's why the longer periods.
Got it.
That the legislatures realize this isn't federal where
Got
they
it.
can build cases.
So
from
federal
scratch.
is much more what we see like on TV when we watch the DEA, do an investigation and gather data
Right.
and they're, viewing people. So by the time they arrest, they got a bunch of the case already put together. That's what I mean by proactive.
Usually the
Usually
way it happens. That doesn't mean they can't be wrong,
Got it. Sure, no, I
right?
get you.
And
right.
a lot of times they are.
Gotcha.
But-
Okay. So that's why it's different.
Right.
So what you're telling me now is I get arrested as a state crime. I could literally, if I don't make bail, I could sit in jail easily 6 months, and I still got my speedy trial.
Could be more.
But easily 6 months, like
more.
easily 6 months,
Yeah,
and I've still officially got my speedy trial, even though my life's been ruined because I sat in jail for 6 months.
You're also trying to negotiate, right? I mean, and this is the reality of the situation with clients that have the resources to hire, private lawyers or people who know what they're doing.
Right.
They're not going to be in jail, or cases are going to move faster because the attorneys will push the cases faster. But now when you're talking about public defenders and the massive amount of people, as one of the callers was talking about, trying to have level the playing field, in theory, it's great. But, there aren't going to be enough public defenders to properly evaluate the case, and people are sitting in jail.
Sure.
And, I get this, when people come to us sometimes, right, they're like, oh, but my public defender didn't call me back. I said, why would you expect him to?
Yeah, he's got 200 cases.
Yes. What were you expecting?
He's got 200 cases. Exactly.
You want gold star treatment when you haven't paid. And that's, unfortunately, that's the reality.
I know. No. I never forget a lawyer once asking me this question. He said, because I was mad, I was going to sue somebody because I was mad. And he goes, Larry, can you afford justice? And I was like, damn it, I can't. So, no justice for me, right? Because I couldn't afford justice at the time, right? I was mad, right? I'm gonna sue somebody, and I couldn't afford justice. And that's what he asked me. Can you afford justice? I said I can't, so I couldn't. And I think it happens in this was civil, but that happens in criminal too, right? Can you afford an attorney that can get you a fair trial, right? And if both sides have resources, you can get a fair trial. And if one does and one doesn't, you're not getting a fair trial. So, all right, let me keep going if I could. So anyway, you do think that speedy trial is an issue, and we have to
100%
work on that too. Okay. This is a different one. Are you saying you think we, the U.S., are headed towards a monarchy or authoritarian government? I think
it's already there. Come on.
I think that's from the Trump piece.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be a little bit maybe dramatic when I say this, but almost everything that's been done since the Vietnam War, most of the things that will be done are going to be forgotten by history. This impeachment will not. This impeachment will not be forgotten by history. 100 years from now, 50 years from now, whatever, Dershowiz's comments are absolutely going to be a turning point in this nation. The Vietnam War was a massive turning point in this country, massive. And 100, 200 years from now, that's going to be a massive turning point, right? That's going to be that historians will still talk about that generation and how the Vietnam era changed America. It will still be important to historians 300 years from now. Every other president's going to be mediocre. Barack Obama will be known because he was the first black president, but otherwise mediocre, forgotten. All of them will be, except this right here, because this impeachment literally said the president can do anything. This is the turning point when a republic becomes an empire. Right? When the republic becomes an empire. Remember, people don't remember this. When the Roman Empire existed, there was an emperor. There was still a Senate. It's not that they got rid of the Senate. There was still a Senate. When the emperor in Japan ran Imperial Japan, there was still what they called a Diet. There was still a Japanese, assembly. When Adolf Hitler ran Germany, there was still a Reichstag, which was their assembly, right? When the Tsar ran Russia, there was still a Duma, which was their assembly. Assemblies still existed. Even Saddam Hussein had a Congress, right? They all had, these things existed and people voted. They were many of them were officially democracies. Japan was officially a democracy when they had an emperor. They were officially, Germany was officially a democracy. We're officially a democracy. But man, it's not feeling like it.
Larry, in your comment is the almost presupposition that history will recognize this for what it is, right? I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I hope that history, because when you were saying just a little while ago that people should have been screaming across the aisle when Dershowitz made that comment, you didn't hear it.
No.
You didn't hear it. I mean, it literally, that was for me one of the lowest points of my lifetime. As a lawyer, I pride myself on the fact that we're going to do the right thing, and ultimately there's a rule of law that what things matter. Ultimately, that if you fight hard enough, you'll get heard and you'll get. He's basically saying whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Whatever.
And Democrats, they were upset, but only because it was Trump. Yeah. They're okay. They just can't wait for their king. Right? They can't wait for King Bernie or King Biden. They don't when they get King Bernie or King Biden, I'm like, yeah, Dershowitz, you're my man. They're gonna be just like that because they just want their king. And this goes back to that peasant mindset. If only we had a good king. We should wait for a good king. Waiting for a good king. So I think without question, we have been moving towards oligarchy for many years. That's been for many years. Remember something, as long as you create an afraid or fearful populace, you will always end up in oligarchy or dictatorship. When people are afraid, they cry for one of two types. They cry for a socialist or they cry for a strongman. That's throughout history. That's every country. That's not America. That's every place. They cry for either socialism or a strongman. And we have Trump as a strongman, Bernie is a socialist, right? So we cry for one of those two, but they always end the same way. Dictatorship, oligarchy.
Right. And you get that here in New York City when people talk about Bloomberg. Right?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's our king, right? That's the New York City king.
He was New York City king, right? I mean, I liked him as a mayor for his first 2 terms, right? And then he changed the rules so he can get a 3rd term, and he became King Bloomberg, and things didn't go as well in the 3rd term, right?
Well, he bought his 3rd term.
Yeah, he bought his 3rd term, and
he's going to buy.
Well, he bought his first 2 terms. I'm sorry.
That's true.
He gave $50,000 to all the Republican committees in each county to become the Republican mayor.
That's true also.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
A lifelong Democrat or whatever he was, to become Republican mayor. So he bought all his terms.
Correct.
All right.
Good point. Valid point.
That now in his 3rd term, he's, he votes himself out, changes the rules so he can get a 3rd term.
For those who don't know, in New York City, you're term limited to 2 terms. Unless your name's Mike Bloomberg. That's the law. If you're Mike Bloomberg, you get 3 terms.
I mean, and the way people talk about him as if he's going to be the savior of America.
100%.
I mean, it's like crazy. I mean, okay, listen, he was a good mayor for the first 8 years, right? He was pretty good. Yeah. He was a breath of fresh air compared to Giuliani, right? For all those issues that you had on with communities, and he had respect for minority communities, but there are things that came out in that 3rd term that really should give you a window and give you pause.
Absolutely.
For worrying about bringing a guy like him. He's a billionaire, therefore he's God, and therefore he's king, and he knows better than all of us.
Well, Republicans want King Trump, and now Democrats want King Bloomberg, right? It's just my king versus your king.
Right.
And that's my point, right? If you look at even Bloomberg now, Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, both Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, were trying to get the DNC to change their rules so they could get into the debates. Refused. Bloomberg said, change the rules. They went, okay. Now Bloomberg has to be in the debates now because Bloomberg says so. Because why? He's the billionaire savior. He's their king. So he will now walk in and save everybody, and he's, I guess, Democrat Jesus. Yes. Well, Jesus was Jewish, right? So there we go. So perfect. There we go.
It works.
Now, if only Bloomberg was a carpenter, now it would be set.
Right.
That's it, exactly. So, all right, let me grab one more if I could. Do you think every Dem or Republican president will now be tried for impeachment by the opposing party?
No.
I think we have set that precedent that now we can just fight each other. I think it depends on the setup, right? I'm not joking. I could see Democrats impeaching him again. If they believe that it will help them get elected, I think Democrats would impeach him again. I don't think it's too crazy to imagine that. Impeach him again.
That's certainly a possibility. I think they did the right thing here. I think they did the right thing. I think there was grounds. I mean, in my view, trying to use your office, holding up aid to investigate your chief political rival, I'm not sure what could be further or what could be closer to what their founders did not want than something like that, right?
Sure.
So remember the term high crimes, and you've spoken about this, on if not here on one of your go lives, it doesn't have to be a crime under the penal law.
Correct. Doesn't
right?
have to be.
High crimes and misdemeanors is a term that's in office to use and withhold money. I mean, I can't think of anything more impeachable than that. Except, wait a minute, not cooperating with the process, which is now the second article.
That was my biggest thing. People were teasing me, and they said, Larry, they can't impeach him. I said, now they can no matter what, because he's ignoring subpoenas.
Right. And
At that point, I knew he could be impeached
Right.
because once you ignore subpoenas, you're done.
Yeah, but not if you're him. Not if you have the
Well, he did get
Republican
impeached.
control. He did get impeached,
Yeah.
but here's the thing. I mean, ultimately, he's not getting convicted for things
Right,
that
yeah.
he should be convicted and removed from office for. So they did the right thing. So when you're saying, do you think that every potential person can get impeached? I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that you're going to have somebody that rises to this level. At least we hope not. Right?
Sure.
I don't see any candidate other than him being, doing the kind of nonsense that him. Is it possible? Maybe Don Jr.
That's good. Next, last question. Is bloody revolution the only way to end the U.S. government Leviathan? God, I hope not. I hope that is not the case. I believe in my heart, and this is why I do what I do. This is why I'm still out there taking my time, energy, and money doing this. I believe Libertarian Party and Liberty Movement is the only answer because we are so polarized. We hate each other as Americans, left versus right. The largest chunk of American voters are those who are non-affiliated. The parties are losing subscribers to their party. They're losing membership. People are going to non-affiliated. Where they're going to go, I hope to us. We are the only movement that says you can be as liberal or as conservative as you want to be. Just don't use government force to force other people to be like you. And we can live together. I just don't see another way of making that work. And that's why I spend so much time doing this. Because if it's not us, then it's violence. And I don't want it to be violence. I don't want us to hurt ourselves. I don't want us to fall into violence. I want us to find a third party, a third way, a third answer. I think this movement is the right answer. I don't know. Do you disagree? Do you think that violence is the only answer?
No.
Good. Yes.
I hope
it's not just me.
I hope that it's your party, Larry, that actually becomes the most viable third party and provides choice. Right.
I love that.
I
yes.
mean, I am pro-choice on the issue of political parties.
I
right?
love it. There we go.
And
Good.
there should be. I mean, why are we stuck?
Absolutely.
Right? Why are we stuck? Because there aren't enough. And what you're doing, Larry, keep doing what you're doing and building up the party. I mean, you're gonna get. I voted for you, and I didn't find it. I thought it was important. There should be a statement that's out there, and if a third party candidate changes the election so that there is now a president if Trump gets reelected because his third party candidate take away, or Bernie Sanders runs independently, well then boo-hoo on the Democrats for not putting forth a stronger leader.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. I like that. Listen to what he said. All right, guys, I want to say thank you so much for coming today. Thank you, my friend, for coming yet again. When people want to get a hold of you, where can I get a hold of you?
VargheseLaw.com, VargheselaW.com.
And your YouTube page, which is very active.
Yes, Varghese and Associates. You can check it out. Instagram.
Facebook page.
Varghese and Associates. And
there we go.
My Instagram is just my name, Vinoo Varghese.
There we go. So check it out, guys. You want to hear him, see what he's talking about. He's talking about Weinstein, talking about impeachment, all the stuff he's saying. Not just here. He's blessed me, but he's also out there on the airwaves. Please enjoy it. Guys, thank you so much. I will see you all next week here on The Sharpe Way.